Hello, everyone. This is Inside the Americas. Coming up. As the historic second impeachment trial of Donald Trump gets underway, we'll be answering your questions about the future of one of America's most controversial presidents. Then, U.S. COVID-19 vaccine rates for Black Americans are far behind those of whites. Our team in California finds out why. And Colombia reaches out to 1 million migrants from Venezuela, offering them legal resident status to help get both health care and work. I'm Jeannie Godula. Donald Trump is facing a historic second impeachment trial in Washington. The former president charged with inciting last month's storming of the U.S. Capitol that left 5 people dead. The trial's emotional first day opened with the Democrats showing a searing video of Trump supporters breaking through police barriers to get inside. That forced Trump's lead defense lawyer to change his approach and go on the attack.
We are really here because the majority in the House of Representatives does not want to face Donald Trump as a political rival in the future. That's the real reason we're here. And that's why they have to get over the jurisdictional hurdle, which they can't get over. But that's why they have to get over that in order to get to the part of the Constitution that allows removal. So that's nobody says it that plainly, but unfortunately I have a way of speaking that way.
Many of you sent in your questions about the impeachment trial, and we're going to try and answer some of them for you today, thanks to France 24's Cole Stengler. Hi, Cole.
Hey, Jeannie.
All right, the first question is from Abed Nziku, who said, why impeach when Trump's out of office? What's the point?
Yeah, that's an argument that a lot of Republicans are actually making. They say this is motivated primarily by vindictiveness, spite, opposition to the ex-president, and they say it's not permitted by the Constitution. Democrats say that, yes, it is allowed just because it hasn't been done before. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, that you can't convict a former president after he's left office. And then they're ultimately arguing, and this is the message that we heard earlier this week in the House, it's about sending a message to future presidents that this sort of conduct is unacceptable. We heard this argument from Jamie Raskin, the lead impeachment manager, saying that we want to send a message to future presidents that they're not above the law just because in that period before the next president takes office. Now, in addition to that, in addition to sending a message, very concretely, if the Senate were to convict Donald Trump here, it could also then have an additional vote to potentially bar Donald Trump from holding future federal office in the future, and that's another incentive here potentially.
Next, we have Lenza Fuge, who wanted to know, what are the chances Trump avoids conviction?
Yeah, there's a broad consensus among Senate Democrats that there may be a vote to convict Donald Trump, but it's more tricky on the Republican side. Pretty high threshold you need in order to convict ex-President Donald Trump. You need 67 senators total. That means you need at least 17 Republicans to vote for this. That looks like it could be an uphill battle. Only 6 Republicans voted in the Senate to move ahead with this case in the first place. So that's not a very good sign if you're in favor of a conviction here. Now, Donald Trump, of course, is one of the most controversial presidents in the U.S., one of the most unpopular presidents historically in the U.S. Ever. But he is very popular among Republicans, and so if you're a Senate Republican watching this, you're thinking about that. We already saw the tremendous backlash against Republicans in the House who voted in favor of impeachment. Republicans are thinking about that a lot in the Senate, trying to avoid that backlash. So we've seen some private concern expressed, off the record anonymously, or privately, Republicans concerned about the president's conduct. But that's very different from going on the record. And frankly, that's a dynamic we saw play out as well during the Trump presidency. Or do you want to hold the president accountable publicly? And it gets a lot more tricky there.
And here's one more from Alma. Could Trump still be tried criminally over the Capitol riot? Is this the end of his legal troubles?
Yeah, it may not be the end of his legal troubles. Now, the specific case here over the Capitol riot could be a difficult case to prove, to try because of broad free speech protections in the United States. But as it stands, there is some movement right now on the state level. In the state of New York, you have a couple of investigations open into Donald Trump and his business. You also have a preliminary investigation in the state of Georgia over Donald Trump's remarks to the Secretary of State there, encouraging him to, quote, find enough votes to presumably win that state in the Electoral College. In addition to that, you also have a couple of defamation cases brought by women who have accused the former president of sexual assault. Donald Trump has denied those allegations, and two women have brought forth defamation lawsuits over that. We'll have to see how that plays out. Now, it is worth bearing in mind that Trump, when he was president, his lawyers said you can't try a sitting president in state court. Of course, now that's a different situation. Donald Trump is no longer president, no longer in the White House.
Cole Stengler, thank you so much for answering all those questions about the Trump impeachment trial. Thanks to all of you for sending them in. Now, also in the States, the COVID vaccine program is rolling out, but the shots are not getting into the arms of many people who need it most, particularly Black Americans. They make up just 13% of the U.S. population, but account for more than 15% of COVID-19 deaths. And despite promises to increase equality in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, little has been done to improve vaccine access in disadvantaged neighborhoods where the majority of essential workers live. This report from our team in LA.
In South Central Los Angeles, this psychiatric clinic has been reborn as a massive vaccination center.
Hey, you okay?
African Americans make up much of the population in this part of town, but few say they've been informed about getting vaccinated. Dr. Jerry Abraham has taken matters into his own hands and is getting doses to some of the most vulnerable.
That grit comes because we have housing insecurity and financial insecurity and food insecurity. That's who we serve. That is who we are, including my healthcare workers. So it's not a surprise that we know what it's like to step up to the challenge and we will get it done. We have no other option. For us, it is life or death. Okay, all right, this is our vaccine.
African Americans are twice as likely to succumb to COVID-19. To help save lives, nurses are vaccinating up to 2,000 people a day.
Really expecting expiring doses from nursing homes to come. We just like, give me some vaccine. And they look in the freezer and they're like, fine. But that's vaccine that needs to go somewhere else too.
Nationwide, Black Americans have so far received only 5% of vaccines, despite making up 20% of essential workers in the country.
I'm a healthcare worker, so it makes me feel a lot safer knowing I can go to work, knowing I have the second vaccine now.
Outside, dozens wait for hours in direct sunlight. Some cannot hide their frustration.
South Central residents should be prioritized when it comes to receiving the vaccinations because we are essential workers, because we are putting our lives on the line so that you may come into the grocery stores, so that your streets are clean.
The nationwide inoculation campaign has another hurdle, overcoming mistrust by African Americans towards professional health care. Due to the pandemic, this Protestant church is now empty. Services are broadcast live on local radio, and the Reverend Walden half-heartedly urges worshipers to get vaccinated.
My brothers and sisters, we believe in God, but we also believe in the reality of science.
More than a third of Black Americans are not considering getting vaccinated, a reluctance towards science that's rooted in history. They fear they may once again be researchers' guinea pigs.
The skepticism is real, science is real, but also history is real.
Many African Americans recall the Tuskegee experiment, which purposefully left Black Americans with syphilis untreated until the 1970s.
They selected 600 poor farmers, telling them that they were going to receive free health care. Many of these farmers, they had syphilis, so they watched these farmers' bodies from decade after decade deteriorate. They never gave them penicillin.
Spiritual leaders in this religious community now have a heavy task to accomplish, to restore faith in science.
Our picture of the week is this one. Health workers in Peru waiting to get their first dose of the vaccine. The country began its coronavirus immunization program this week, just 2 days after receiving 300,000 vaccine doses from China. Healthcare workers in Lima were first in line. Close to 300 doctors and over 100 nurses have died in Peru from the virus. Next to Colombia, where there's been a new move to help migrants there. This week, the country decided to temporarily normalize the status of almost 1 million undocumented migrants from Venezuela. This could help them get work and healthcare services, including COVID-19 vaccines. Solange Mougin explains.
After border crossings, an endeavor at integration. Of the over 5 million Venezuelans who've fled economic hardship and dictatorship in the past 5 years, a third of them have gone to Colombia, and the majority of them have no legal status. But the Colombian government has decided to change that. The president announced he'd provide 10-year residency permits to around 1 million Venezuelans.
This process marks a milestone in Colombia's immigration policy. It also marks a milestone in the history of immigration policy in Latin America.
The move is in stark contrast to the increasingly restrictive policies of other Latin American nations. It's also a change in course for Colombia, and one that could have health benefits for the country. President Duque came under fire in December after he announced that undocumented Venezuelans would not receive the coronavirus vaccine. Amidst outrage, he reversed that policy. The protected status permit will give access to health and education services for Venezuelans. For this single mother of 4, having papers would be life-changing.
Having a valid ID in Colombia would make people say, look, she has something that allows her to work, to raise her children, to provide them with an education.
The UNHCR's High Commissioner, on a visit to a Colombian migrant center, praised the move.
This generosity should not be taken for granted. Colombia hosts 1.7 million Venezuelans that have fled from their country. Colombia needs more international support.
Colombia's president said that the visa scheme should provide some relief. But he said that for the crisis to cease, countries need to reflect on how to end the dictatorship in Venezuela.
And finally, in the United States at least, lawyers are often known as sharks. But this week, one lawyer in Texas somehow turned himself into a kitten. Rod Ponton accidentally added a cat filter to his Zoom call during a hearing for a case. The resulting video became an instant classic, a title it definitely deserves. Take a look.
Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
The cat lawyer took the instant fame in stride, saying, if I can make the country chuckle for a moment in these difficult times, I'm happy to let them do that at my expense. Nice to know he has a sense of humor. We'll leave you with that. Thanks so much for watching Inside the Americas. We will see you next week for all the news from north to south.
Je regarde France 24 parce qu'en tant qu'étudiante en sciences politiques, ça me permet de rester à jour sur les informations dans le monde, sur les conflits, les débats politiques, tout ça.
الاختلاف بين فرانس 24 والقنوات التانية في المحتوى المتنوع وفي التوجه الأقرب للحيادية.
I like their coverage, especially with the news and the politics, but also I like the cultural aspect because that me as a Kenyan, I get to learn a lot about Francophone, Africa, Francophone in general, whether it's in Europe or here, just from France 24.
France 24 m'aide à voir une perspective plus complète du monde et à comprendre différentes langues et différentes cultures.
France 24, with you everywhere, all the time. Liberté, égalité, actualité.